Hello everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to Monday. Welcome you to Monday, like I own Monday. My video isn't sponsored by Monday. Hi. Is it obvious I've just kind of rolled from the bedroom into this room? So yeah, I've just woken up. How is everyone? How is everyone doing? Today is Monday, so I have all your ghost stories lined up for you guys today. If you have any ghost stories, paranormal experiences, just weird experiences, funny weird experiences, you can send them to this email address right here, and I'm slowly making my way through all of those one at a time. So if you're new here, if you don't usually watch these videos, maybe you're just giving it a go because you've usually been too scared prior. Every Monday I read out your ghost stories and do my makeup at the same time, and we create a look that's kind of like based on like a ghost. So like a way to die, nothing too deep, nothing too heavy. And this series is very much based on Bailey Saren's Murder Mystery Makeup Mondays. She combines two things that she loves doing. Not, she doesn't love doing true crime. She combines true crime and makeup. And I love horror and the paranormal and makeup. So I thought it was a great idea, and I thought I would mix those two together as well. I'll link her channel below. Go and check her out. You would absolutely love her videos. Yeah, so today's kind of theme is, I couldn't think of anything, but the palettes I'm using kind of gave me an idea. So I was like, let's say like, for some reason, there's this like big government agency that are like stealing people. So what they've done is they've frozen me. You know when they freeze people cryogenically? You know what I'm trying to say. Cryogenically? Is that how you say it? And then, so what we're going to create a look today, and it's, I've woken up, I've been defrosted, and they tried to make me into like a half robot, half human hybrid, but then I died on an operating table because technology isn't there yet, and it's like a million years later, you would think. But, so I made that sound like I'm going to do something super crazy. I'm really not. Okay, what am I doing? Makeup. Okay, so I just applied my eye primer in complete silence for some reason. So that's done. Okay, so let's get straight into it. Let's start with story number one. And story number one is called The Scratched Back. Ooh. So it says, "Hi Robert, hi. Just wanted to share my ghost story with you. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much. My friend used to live in a house where her family believed there was a portal, and it has several entities that they would tell me about, but I always remained skeptical. One year on the weekend of the 4th of July, her parents were going to be out of town, so they asked me to spend the night, and I agreed because a long sleepover with my close friend sounded awesome. It's important to note we tried to do a clearing in her house after her parents left, as we believed there was something attached to her mum, and were trying not to interfere with it. Gradually, we started to feel the house becoming more and more heavy, along with dark shadows in corners that were well lit. No. We brushed it off, and later that night when we tried to sleep, I heard my friend yell out in pain, only to discover she was burned all around her neck where her rosary had been touching her. At this point, I was just trying to keep her calm. Shortly after this, I felt a burning sensation on my back. I asked her to look, and she told me there were 4 scratch marks across my back. That's when we left the house. Absolutely. Believe it or not, I did stay the night several times after this. Why? But we never again tried to do a clearing or even burnt sage without her mother there. That's the short version anyway. And a few more things happened at my house and my childhood home, so I might submit a few more later on. Yes, please do. If you have more stories, pack them all in that email. Thank you so much. You know, I always, referring to that bit in the story where the burn marks appeared where like the rosary beads would be, I always think that, I mean, I'm not a religious person, but I'm a strong believer that people can practice whatever religion they want. And I feel like when a spirit or when even a person attacks you for your religious belief or your religious jewelry, whatever, then they're like truly evil because then they know they're playing on something you really, really strongly believe in. It's like when they go for your children. Our next story is called The Sleep Paralysis Dementors. Hi Robert. When I was 5 or 6 years old, my mum and stepdad lived in this really creepy house. My mum is skeptical about the whole paranormal thing, but even she would confirm that this house had some serious bad vibes. When you feel those vibes, you just have to go with it. She told me I used to tell her about an old man that would sit beside my bed, which I don't remember. And apparently, things would also fly off our fireplace. I vividly remember every night I would wake up feeling terrified, like something was holding me down. I couldn't catch my breath, and I would try to shout for my mum, but no sound would come. Now that I'm older, I know that it was probably sleep paralysis. I also sleepwalked a lot too. My mum would wake up and I'd just be standing next to her, which really creeps me out even thinking about it. I used to randomly see things out the corner of my eye, like something flew past me. The best way I can describe it is that it looked like one of the Dementors out of Harry Potter. We moved out of the house not long after living there, and I've never experienced sleep paralysis or sleepwalking since. I wonder if it really was sleep paralysis or something else. Who was the old man? Personally, I don't think it was my brain playing tricks, as I was very much awake and could feel how terrifying it was. What's your opinion on sleepwalking and sleep paralysis? Thank you so much for your story. Here's the deal. I've sleepwalked quite a lot in the past. Even sometimes now I wake up screaming. I've done stuff sleepwalking that should have woke me up in the past. Sleep paralysis, though, I can't even imagine. It must be terrifying. I do find it weird as well, because sleep paralysis is something, I mean, it's a scientific study as well. There's been studies into it, so we know it's something that obviously exists. I do find it weird though how I was watching something recently, I can't remember, was it a documentary? I don't know. Yeah, it must have been. What else would it be? Sleep paralysis. And I do find it weird how a lot of people see the same thing, like it's either this haggard, they call it the haggard lady, don't they, or something like that, who like starts out in a corner of your room and then she creeps on over just up onto your chest and then like kind of, does she strangle you or does she just make it really difficult to breathe? I don't know. I guess if anyone was kneeling on your chest, you wouldn't really be able to breathe. Some people like that, I don't know. But I do find it kind of weird that, you know, so it does kind of open like a supernatural part of it to me. But I don't know. I wish there was more kind of science behind it. Because I know people that experience it, it's terrifying. I mean, you would be fucking terrified, you know? I'm just going to deepen this outside socket a little bit. Okay, so our third story today is called Crying from His Deep Blue Eyes. Ooh, a love story. No, it's not. My grandmother lives in the house attached to my family's and has done for most of her life. She knew and was friendly with everyone that once lived in our house, though they all passed away long before I was born. For most of my childhood, I dealt with sleep paralysis and walking nightmares, during which I often hallucinated ghosts and monsters. One apparition that would often occur was rather tame compared to the others, and didn't seem harmful. It was a man who would sit at the end of my bed. It's like a theme in today's videos. It was more real than any other vision, and he would look at me straight in the eyes while sobbing wildly. He was the only vision clear enough for me to see his face, and those piercing blue eyes I could never forget. Visions were typical for those suffering from my condition, so I settled on a comforting thought that they were all in my head and tried not to think much of them once they stopped. This changed, however, when my grandmother decided to look through boxes of her old photos with me. She pulled one photo out, and that's when I saw him again. For the first time in 11 years, standing next to my grinning Nan. He had his arm around her waist and his eyes were so blue they turned almost white in the old black and white photo. I asked her who he was, and she told me he used to live in my house. I asked her what happened to him, and to this day, she refuses to answer. Thank you so much for that story. Oh my god, I really want to know what happened. Who is this man? There's something about, I always say this at the end of videos, but there's something about, so crying and praying as a ghost for some reason is terrifying. Two things like in everyday life that aren't terrifying. Like if I was to see someone crying, I wouldn't like scream. If I was to see someone praying, I wouldn't scream. But however, if a ghost appeared in my room and they were crying or praying, I would be more scared than if they were just standing there looking at me. I don't know why. I'm just going to take some of this blue under my eye, but I'm not going to talk for a second just because I don't want it to go all... So our next story is called The Lady on the Street. Okay, I'm going to just move on to my skin and finish up my eyes in a minute. It says, I live for your ghost videos, so I thought I'd send in my 2 stories. Thank you so much. When I was younger, I used to wake up in the middle of the night to an older lady at the end of my bed praying in Spanish. Right, these stories, I'm never going to go to bed again. I'm praying, I just said praying so scary. I didn't know who or what was happening, but it would happen a couple of nights a week. Every time it happened, she came closer and closer, so I could see exactly what she looked like. During this time, I walked to school with my mother and sister every morning, and I see a lady walk past us smiling. I was super shy, so I just looked down. I told this to my mum after a couple of weeks, and she told me just to smile back to her, so I did the next day. And after that, I stopped seeing her. After that, the old lady disappeared as well. I told my mum about it a couple of weeks later, and she asked me what they looked like. It turned out to be my mum's grandma and her half-sister, who both passed before I met them. My mum broke down crying as her grandma used to visit her at night as well. The second story is about my boyfriend. He lived in his childhood home even after his parents have moved out after they got divorced. Lights would turn on and off, creaky noises and knocking could be heard all the time. When I moved in there, I hated the feeling of it, and after a while we moved out. In our new place, similar things have happened, but it's been weirder since we got our cat. He randomly stares into space, runs around like someone is playing with him, he meows into our spare room, and he turns his head like someone's petting him. My boyfriend told me that he had his granddad's ashes in the basement of his old house, but his uncle has them now. We still have a lot of his things and we think it's him, so we're somewhat okay with it. Listen. I still feel like if somebody was haunting me, even if I felt like, oh, I know this person, I would still be like, you know, I'd rather you weren't here. Okay, our next story is called The Back Garden Shadow. This is one of my fears. I'll explain after. Okay. Hi Robert, I've been watching Ghosts and Makeup Monday since the beginning and I love it so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here the whole way through. Okay, so this happened to my best friend D when I was around 8 or 9 years old. Could be Di, but I'm gonna say D. D lived in a part of Indonesia where the traditional houses have a very tall foundation, so you needed to climb a stair to reach the front door. Her family also had a vast garden surrounding the house. One night, Dee was still playing around outside, even though she usually had to go inside the house before 6 p.m. She realised that it had gotten darker and darker outside, and less people seemed to be around, until no one was around. She heard her sister calling her to come back home, so she ran to the house before her father yelled at her for being late. As she climbed the stairs to the front door, she saw a glimpse of a shadow that looked like a woman near her garden's gate. She thought it must just be my imagination. Around 9 p.m, Dee decided to take a look at her window where you could see the backyard. After a few minutes of staring at the stars, she saw the woman's shadow again, and this time the woman stood in her backyard. She rubbed her eyes, thinking that it may just be something else again. She thought maybe she just needed to go to sleep. A little later, she felt like the woman's shadow was getting closer and closer, but she decided to ignore it and go back to sleep. It was 3 a.m. in the morning when she got woken up 3 a.m. by a tapping sound coming from her window. She thought it was just an animal moving around, as that would be very normal for where they lived. However, it kept getting louder and louder to the point where she couldn't ignore it anymore. She went up and opened the curtain slightly. As she opened it, she was shocked to see the woman's shadow was even closer. However, when she rubbed her eyes, it was gone. She forced herself to fall asleep, but was woken by a loud thump at her window. She literally jumped off her bed. She decided to keep ignoring it until she accidentally saw an eye staring at her through the gaps in her curtain. She was feeling hopeless and didn't know what to do, so she started praying so hard and kept her eyes closed until the morning. The next morning, she opened the curtains and saw a handprint on the glass. It's just like, where are you safe if that thing can come right up to your window? Thank you so much. That is terrifying and really, really scared me. I have this kind of like fear, and I know it's kind of irrational. Well, probably not now, I've read that. But I would always think, like, imagine just, like, there's something about looking out the windows at night that makes me very, very uncomfortable. Like, imagine staring out your window and then you see what she saw, like a shadow just staring back at you, or like the silhouette of a person like standing in your bushes, or oh, it's just horrible. It's a really horrible thought. That's why, you know what, I would love a big house with those like floor to ceiling glass windows, but the fear of seeing somebody staring back at you through them. I know, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. So because I'm like a robot, I kind of want to keep the skin kind of wet, shiny looking, but I am going to just kind of put a tiny bit of powder in the areas that I want to be matte. So it's going to go right in the middle here. Alright guys, that is our finished look today. I'm shiny, I'm metallic, I'm a ghost robot in your house in a million years time, hacking your mainframe and ruining your Alexa. Well, thank you so much for your stories this week. There seemed to be a kind of like sleep paralysis theme going on, which is terrifying for people. So thank you so much for those. Go ahead and send your stories to this email here. They can be ghost stories, they can be weird stories, they can be just weird time stories. It doesn't have to be completely terrifying and paranormal. If you've made it this far in a video, leave a little black heart emoji down below for me. I'd love to see how many people make it to this point. Yeah, thank you so much. Have an amazing week ahead. Stay strong. I feel like this week is going to be just fine for everyone. All right, guys, thank you so much. I will see you Wednesday. I will see you Friday and Sunday also as well, guys, just so you know, some of you may listen already, but me and my brother have a podcast called the Double Cleanse Podcast, and it's a podcast all about skincare and makeup and everything to do with kind of like the industry, influencer industry, beauty industry, everything like that. So if you like podcasts, if you're like planning on having a big clean and you need something to listen to in the background, go ahead and take a listen. Yes, I will see you very soon. Thank you again. Have an amazing week. Bye.